Hey everyone, welcome to Amberg Acres. So what I'd like to do is share with you some of my trials and tribulations of sawing wood. So we got to start here now. We're cleaning up this hill a little more, and we're going to build a canopy for over the sawmill, the Woodland Mills HM130. The reason I'm doing this is because it's a little hard. I have some trees right here. You probably haven't seen a full picture of this, but you will at some point. So I have some trees right here, some big trees that I do not want to cut down. So I'm trying to push this hill back just a little more to give me a couple more feet for swinging around the log. And it's a little tight right now, the way I had it set up with the canopy. Let me show you that canopy quick. So if you're thinking about getting one of these canopies to cover your sawmill or anything else, the tractor, whatever, the problem with it is the tarps do not hold up. So we bought this when we moved up here in 22. So it's 3 years old and it's pretty much junk right now. A couple of the poles got damaged, which had really no effect on the tarp. So I fixed the poles. I got the poles somewhat straight again and I fixed those. But if you're in a harsh environment like we are with the heavy snows and the storms and the wind and branches coming down and whatever, this is not the way to go. Okay, so I bought this one on Amazon and it's a good heavy duty canopy, but they just don't hold up. So if you want to spend, you know, $300 and some, I think this was, if you want to spend that much every 3 years, well, you know, go ahead. Okay, so what we're gonna do is in this area here, we're gonna build a solid lean-to, basically made out of 6x6s and all the wood that I've milled on the HM130. So the reason I'm trying to push it back a little bit is because of these trees. I got some big popples in here, some oaks. The birch are kind of dead, so those two could come down. But I don't want to cut this. This kind of separates me from the rest of the yard. So I don't want to cut this down. I want to leave this just the way it is. All right. So after milling for a year and a half, what are my thoughts? Well, we kind of just covered the first one, and that's giving yourself enough room to work is a big one. Okay. You have to have, number one, you have to have a way to get the logs in on the mill. You have to have enough room to swing a tractor, which is what I'm using as the tractor. At my age, I don't know how you would do it any other way without a tractor or some kind of a machine to lift those logs in place. But I see guys that do it with winches and other stuff. That seems like a lot of work to me. You need room, okay? So that's what we're doing here. We're making ourselves a little more room, getting something more permanent over the top of it so it's out of the weather. I see people with them just sitting out in their backyards and stuff. I know it's galvanized metal and that, but you know, it just, I don't see that holding up for a very long time. Okay, you're making a big investment here. You want to take care of it just so you do your car or something else, right? The next thing would be having a place to put your lumber once you sawed it. Okay, so I have, and I don't know if you can see it behind me here. I'll move the camera a little bit. So right over here behind my backhoe, I have stacks of lumber. These are mostly 2x8s and 2x6s that I cut up for building inside the barn. I have more down here, and I have a whole bunch out here in the apple orchard. I got to do something with that. It can't just sit there in the apple orchard. So that's why I say you need a place to put it. Hopefully a level place. And even better, if you could put it inside a barn, would be the best place, which I don't have that option because it's all looking bad. Okay, the tarps do not work. The blue tarps, don't even waste your money on those. If you can get tin, so some of the piles I have tin on top. The tin works pretty good as long as it extends past the boards you're cutting. So anything like that would help. But you need a somewhat level surface, which I did not have, so I've kind of just stacked this stuff out, and I'm working with it. When I take these boards off of these piles here, they're warped, they're twisted a little bit, but we're working with it. We're building rooms and getting stairways built and whatever else we've all done in the past couple months here. It's working. We're making it work. But that would be another thing, is a place for you to put your wood that's better than just sitting out in the open like this. If you let it sit where it's going to get rained on, it's not going to be good wood, period. Okay, so you need to have it covered somewhat. Okay, at least the top covered, some weight on top of it to hold the stacks in place and that type of stuff. Okay, the other thing, just for talking about wood in general, is some place to go with your slabs and all your leftovers. Your slabs that are left over, the top first couple cuts you make is pretty much garbage. You're gonna turn it into firewood, or you gotta do something with it. So having something for that. Now, one of my thoughts was making a rack where I could just throw the stuff in a rack and then come in with the forks later on and pick it up and take it somewhere. Right now I have a huge pile across the road over there in my wood yard that I intend to cut up and split up into firewood and just burn it in my wood burner here for the garage. That would be another thing you have to take into consideration. What are you going to do with all those slabs? Then along with the slabs comes the next couple cuts. When you're trying to make a cant, you might end up with a couple of 1 inch or 1.5 inches, whatever you cut them to, slabs that you know, right now I'm making signs with them, camping signs and that type of stuff, cabin signs, people are hanging their cabins, that type of stuff. That's what I'm doing with it. But you have to have a place to put that stuff, so you want to stack that separately than your regular wood. What I did is I took the slabs and I put them down on the skids first and made a couple of layers of slabs. Then I put my good wood, my 2x6s and 2x8s in the middle, and then I put some more slabs on top. And that way, if the slabs get ruined, it's no big deal. At least the good lumber, the 2x6s and 2x8s, should be good in the middle, right? That was my thinking behind it. So I got a bunch of slabs all over the place that I don't know what to do with. I got some 2-inch slabs that I cut that I thought I'd make some tables out of, and you know, that I never get around to doing that stuff because I'm so busy doing other stuff, so I never get around to building the tables or any of that type of stuff. And maybe down the road I will, but you have to have some place to put all that stuff. So those are some of my problems just with the wood in general. Now last week here, this is what are we? We're at the beginning of June here. It'll be June 1st tomorrow, I believe. So last week here, I cut this big tree down right behind me here, right behind the camera. Okay, this was a big 40-inch wide oak at the bottom. It's hollow in the middle. It's all rotted out, so it's not any good for sawing, but there are some pieces there that I might be able to saw some stuff out of. And then you got all the branches and stuff over here. A lot of this stuff is cracked when it hit the ground. I don't know how much good stuff is in there, but it's all firewood. So now I got to deal with that. I got to get that out of here and put that somewhere also. There's a lot of things to consider when you're thinking about getting a sawmill. If you're going to buy logs, that gets expensive. Then you have to have an idea of what you're going to make out of it, because you're not just cutting it up to cut up something. You have to have a plan to get rid of the wood or to do something with the wood. Not everybody's in the market for buying rough sawn lumber, because you can't use it for building a house or anything like that. So you have to kind of think about some of these things, okay? So now let's get to the sawing. So what did I learn sawing wood? So the first thing I learned is the blades do not go as far as you think. 2 or 3 logs, if you're sawing the entire log up with the blade, 2 or 3 logs, your blade is pretty much done. You know, take it off, put another new one on, if that's how you're doing it. So I made a sharpener. So what I do now is I rough out the logs, I rough out a cant, I cut some of the slabs and all that other stuff that I was just talking about with that resharpened blade. and that gets me through it. It's not always a nice, pretty finish or a nice cut on the outside of that cant. But then when I get, you know, 5, 6, 8, 10 cants stacked up on a pile, then I switch to a brand new blade and I start cutting my lumber. And I take a little slice off the top, take a nice cut, get a nice square edge, and then I flip it again and work from there. And I get to my size that I want, and that's how I cut my lumber. And I previously made a video a while back here that I posted that, you know, it talks just about squaring up 2x2 lumber, basically, or 1x lumber, or whatever I was cutting that day. That's the next thing you got to think about, is how many blades you go through. So now I've gone through 11 blades in a year and a half, okay? And I have one sharp one left, and I have a whole bunch of resharps, you know, 10 resharps. So it's time for me to buy new blades. Well, that's $200 some for another bundle of blades, right? So those are the things you have to consider. Other than that, sawing the wood itself on the sawmill, the speed, you see these guys just ripping through these boards on camera, on the videos. Yeah, you're going about a quarter of that speed, even less probably, to saw your boards if you want them to be straight. You can't just, even with a new blade, you can't just rip through it. Every time you get to a knot, you're going to get a little hump or a wave. That's another thing to think about. And then stacking, you have to cut stickers, you have to cut stuff for your skids, you have to cut all that stuff, which you should really do first before you start cutting the lumber, because you have no place to stack the lumber. You don't want to just throw it on the ground and then it rains that night or the next day, and then that's all. To me, that's you just ruined all your nice lumber that you were making. You can't run it all through a planer. That's not practical. The sawmill does not stay level, okay? Especially if you're in an area like this where I'm just working on top of dirt. This is a sand clay mix that we have here. It's mostly sand, but it has some clay in it, so it kind of, when it rains, it gets like almost like greasy. You know, your tires start spinning and all that type of stuff. So every time you come out here, you got to re-level the sawmill. So that's something you got to check. And then after you have it leveled, then you want to check your blade and all that stuff. You got to do that every time, pretty much, if you want your lumber to turn out. So for right now, I'm out of thoughts on what else I can tell you about using a sawmill. It's a nice machine. It's great for making stuff for yourself. I don't know that the Woodland Mills HM130 would be something you would go and try cutting wood for other people. It's a manual machine, obviously, but it takes a while. So you'd have to figure out a way to charge them that's not hourly, especially if they're expecting you to lift the logs and do all the stuff because they have no equipment or whatever. You have to have that figured in somehow, what you're going to charge for that wood for them. And I can tell you from personal experience, I tried selling my services to a couple of people and they all balk at it. They think I'm asking for too much money. Well, the tractor doesn't run on air. The sawmill doesn't run on air. The blades cost 30 bucks a piece. You know, just keep adding it up and you'll come up with a price. If I think of anything else, I will add it to the end of this video. So I thought about it for a day or two here, and I really haven't come up with anything else with the sawing. The sawmill itself, the Woodland Mills HM130Max, is a solid machine. Nothing wrong with the machines. If I wouldn't have that machine and I wouldn't have been able to cut all that wood, I wouldn't be doing any of this building that I'm doing inside the barn. It would just cost too much to go out and buy my own wood to do all that stuff, especially like those timbers for the stairway and stuff. I mean, I don't know that you can even go buy a timber like that, you know. So there's pluses and minuses to everything you do. Don't take me wrong here. I'm not complaining about how hard this is. I love what I'm doing. I love my retirement. This is the greatest life anybody could have as far as I'm concerned, living up here in the North Woods and doing whatever I want each day. it is turning out perfect for me. I just wanted to share this video with you guys so that if you're thinking about going out and buying a sawmill, that you have a little bit of stuff to think about before you do that. You know, do you have the space? Do you have whatever? You would never buy a sawmill if all you had was a city lot somewhere. That just wouldn't make sense, you know? You would never have enough room to run the thing and put the wood somewhere and whatever. So you gotta have some acreage, you gotta have some place to put this stuff. And that's all I was getting at in this video, was to try and explain that to you guys better. So don't take me wrong, that I'm very happy with the mill, I'm very happy with the work I do here. I just wanted to share it with you guys, okay? So with that said, if you like these videos, you know, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, and we will catch you on the next one. Later.